Hi YouTube, welcome to Pagan Perspective. This is Megan, aka Superior Siri, and today is Friday. And we are talking about the role of magic. So this topic is interesting because I jive with it. So basically the topic is about what role does magic play in your practice, and what do we think about magic as far as the differences between ancient pagans and doing more ritual worship versus magic, and how big of a role magic actually plays in modern pagan practices. So that's sort of the idea. And then it also asked about, like, when did you start incorporating it, and was it something that you did at the beginning, that kind of thing. So that doesn't so much apply to me. So we've kind of talked about it before. I'm hereditary. I was brought into this as long as I can remember. It's just all I've known. So for me, my practice is all that I've known. It's like being brought up in any religion. It's what you know. And so the parts of it that I've brought in kind of since I've been older, the way I've expanded my religion is by adding different forms of magic, because magic was something that was part of it when I was younger, but it definitely wasn't as big a part as my friends in the pagan community use magic in their practices. So I can get into that a little bit. So basically the idea is this: what is that role that magic plays in your practice? And for a lot of pagans, magic is something that's a major component of their practice. In fact, for some, it almost can't be extrapolated from their path. So magic is an essential component. It's part of their religion, versus someone who is practicing the religious side of paganism, the ritual worship and the day-to-day, if you would, versus doing spell casting. So when I look at my own path, I look at spell casting as an extra little add-on. Basically, spellcasting is used in my path the same way that prayer is used in many Abrahamic faiths. And so for me, being brought up, it was always one of those things where if, you had something, instead of saying your prayers, if you had something that, you really wanted, well, you do a spell for it. Now, the difference is prayer, you just sort of ask for it, and there really isn't any, I'm sure maybe somebody can correct me in Abrahamic faiths that there might be some sort of consequence, but at least to my knowledge, prayer didn't usually, the connotation that I got from friends and things was that there was not a consequence for prayer. Where magic is different. I was brought up knowing that there were consequences for actions. However, it wasn't a scary thing. It was always, you need to think about it. You really need to think about, what do you want in this case, and is it worth it? And it was always sort of wrapped into life itself. So, for example, when I was younger, I wanted a puppy, and I guess most little kids, right? I guess I was probably middle school age. And anyway, I wanted a King Charles Spaniel. That was like my dream. And so my mom said, okay, do a presentation, which is how she would often do things, because I was a very precocious child at times. And so it was easier to not argue with me, but to just let me try and convince her. So she said, do a presentation, an oral component, a written component, and a visual component, right? So I start doing my research because I need to do this big presentation. And I start doing research all about, what they need, how to take care of them, all the different steps, like every little bit about the King Charles Spaniel. And I love them. They are adorable. But I also realized, whoa, I'm not ready for this. Like, I'm not ready to take on a dog. This is a lot of work. I don't think so. And so, my mom a couple of weeks later she was like, oh, well, are you still working on that presentation? I said, yeah, no, I don't want a dog anymore. It's fine. So my mom didn't have to tell me no. I didn't have to get mad at her, anything like that. Just by allowing me to find out about, all right, what would be the pros and cons? What would be the consequences? Positive consequences and negative consequences. What would be the consequences of my actions if I were to get a dog? And just by doing that, she was able to completely avoid having that conversation. Now, I could have said, yes, I want it. And then I'd have the presentation, and then I would try and convince her, and we would have gone on that path, But the idea was that I looked at the pros and cons naturally, because that's what the presentation required, and then I made a decision from that. So that's how magic and spellcasting worked in my house, where it was always one of those, here are all the pros and cons. Here are all the consequences, negative and positive, that can happen from what you're doing. Is it still worth it? Is it worth it? You want, to ask for there to be a snow day. Well, is it really worth it? Is it really worth all of these things that could potentially happen because of that? And so we'd go into all the little details about, well, what if somebody had to miss work, and then there wouldn't be as much money, and then, we might not have certain toys or gifts or things. And so, there are different ways to approach it, and at least that's how it was done for me in my house. So it was always made very practical. Like what are the practical consequences for your actions? And so I take that today, and even now I think about when I get super, super angry at somebody, and it's just, and I do, you have those moments where it's like, I really want to make them pay, right? You want that revenge. And then you have to sit back and go, okay, first off, I'm mad. So I'm going to, always sleep on it, never do something in anger. And then on top of that, it is, what are the consequences going to be for this? Do I really want this? Does this person A really deserve it? And sometimes, yeah, they really do deserve it. However, do I deserve it? And that's really where I have to ask myself, do I deserve having to deal with all those consequences? And is it so bad what happened that, like, I really will take those on? And I think that will probably change when I have kids, because I know that, I will take on a lot more for my kids' protection than I would, for my own, self in all of that. So basically, for me, spellcasting is not a daily thing by any means. It is rare. It is not something I do super frequently. Ritual is something I do much more frequently. And also, because my path is different than the Wiccan path and some of the initiatory kind of learned pagan religions that are out there, some of the more formed ones, the ones that were created recently, I guess within the last 50 years or whatever. So my path is different than that. And so ritual doesn't always have to be very elaborate. Ritual can be as simple as, sitting with myself in meditation. So it's not something that is necessarily has to be a big spectacle, though, those certainly have their place, and I love them. And with a family, we'll definitely be doing them more, as I did a lot more of those when I was younger. But now that I'm away from family and, in Maui, it's different. You don't need to do quite as much, and time too. Life gets in the way. We all have struggles, and so we have to make time. We have to make time for our religion. We have to make time for those things. But spellcasting definitely, and magic definitely, is a component of what I do. I see it as intrinsic with it. I don't see it as a separate thing from it. I see it as just another component of my religion. So for me, they are not, I can't separate out my religion from the magic. And I know that can be for other pagans, where the magic is separate for them than the ritual. And so for me, it's not. It does mean, though, that they're like, because a ritual to me is magic. So it's hard. Magic is happening in every ritual. But spellcasting doesn't have to happen at every ritual. And so spellcasting can be kind of sporadic and only as needed. However, it still is an essential component, and it's not something that, can be taken out of my practice. So it's part of it. It's part of me. So that's basically it. I hope I kind of answered that. I haven't been able to watch any of the other videos. I need to catch up with them. And so I'm not sure if I'm completely off from what everybody's saying or, I'm in line. This is what I do. And when I read the question, this is what I got out of it. So I hope everybody is having a fantastic week. And as always, blessed be and aloha.